you know a bit about Marco Bellocchio from the little introduction, video introduction. First of all, Marco, congratulations for winning the Lifetime Achievement Award here, a very prestigious award, and in a very overcrowded but very interesting film festival, one of the best that we have in our region, in the whole of Asia.
To Festival of Kerala, because I am very glad, very honored to have received this very prestigious award. And so I hope to defend with my cinema this award.
In this conversation, I'd like to draw you out, your thoughts on a few subjects, and please feel free to change the topic if you want, so to speak. Now, you have been making films for almost 50 years. And yeah, your first film was released in, Fist in the Pocket was released in 1965. How do you see the language of cinema having changed in these 50 years? You have been consistently creative, consistently true to yourself, but how do you see the filmmaking world in the last few years compared to when you started?
Yes, the language is changed because the technique is changed. It's a paradox, but now it's much more easier to make a film than when I start to make a film, because everybody can make a film, and that's a great opportunity, very democrat, because only the quality can be recognized. And, at that time was very difficult. 50 years ago, life was very, very difficult to find the money just to make a little film. This change, but also this change the language. I don't speak about myself because also my language has changed, but the television style in Italy, in Europe, in the world has changed. Not the imagination, not the images, but the rhythm, the cutting, many things that you can, for a technique point of view, you can do quite everything now. I don't think that it's, but the risk is the void. The risk is to repeat formula, to imitate other cinema. In Europe, I don't know, in India, above all, the American cinema.
You said that there's far too much available technically. You think that causes a little confusion, a little dilution of the image?
But everybody has the right to say, I'm a filmmaker. Really, everybody can make a film with a little telephone. And it's true that you can make a film with a little budget, much little, but smaller than why start to make a film, absolutely. But the quality is another thing, the imagination is another thing, the originality is another thing. And
and that always shines.
But everybody has the right to try.
Your very first film, to return to the beginning of your career, A Fist in the Pocket, many of the themes that you developed in your subsequent films were introduced there. The bourgeois family, the theme of relation between parents and children, mothers and sons, particularly insanity, and the political upheavals that Italy was witnessing in the 60s and 70s and in all those decades. Many of these themes are already there in your very first film. And how have you, and there was a certain anger and a certain powerful charge to that early film of yours. How have you changed in subject and approach, and even perhaps philosophy, over these decades?
Yes, that anger now is different, but what I said before to journalists, that the theme of Mrs. the Pockets was cruel, was very violent, but it was my first film, and I have a memory of, I don't say the joy, but the enthusiasm to make my first film, and but the attitude against the institution was very cruel, and also a kind of violence that now I don't feel anymore. My anger is much more elaborate, and I'm still. We can find also in many other of my film the same anarchism against the power of the father, but with a representation different. For instance, The Mother's Smile is a revisitation of Fist in the Pockets, in which the protagonist is not and doesn't accept this violence to kill the mother. I mean, the way out, the solution, the freedom is not that, because always return the phantom of the killing the mother, and so the theme remain, but the way to represent this change.
Sure, and some of the films, most recent one, the last one that you have released, Dormant Beauty, there are genuine acts of love, and some of the characters are quite tender. This is the film which was about euthanasia, the right to die, and it caused a lot of political debate, and in Italy, not just political debate and theological debate also. And so this, would you call it a mellowing on your part from earlier years?
But Dormant Beauty is the start is an episode very who created a great debate in Italy about the end of life for a young girl who had only a vegetarian.
She's in coma, she's vegetating.
And so his father struggled against the law to permit to this poor girl just to die in peace. And but in the film there are this episode and also other episodes in which the life is front with another attitude. I mean, because if I am for the right to decide the end of my life, but also I struggle when I see young people who want destroy our life, and so I am against this kind of suicidal
instinct.
And that's the film about both, I think, not only the euthanasia.
One of your other important films, Good Morning Night, the one about the kidnapping of Aldo Moro, confronts two attitudes, the attitude of Moro, the older man, who is left-wing and liberal and a humanist, and the younger people who have kidnapped him, who are radical and fanatic and suicidal in a way, destructive in any case. In that film, we see the juxtaposition of those two generations. How deep is the youth, in your opinion, this division in Europe today, or maybe even in other parts of the world, between the attitudes of humanism and liberalism and the attitude of fundamentalist belief and radical violence, violent action?
But per fortuna, come si dice per fortuna? But grace, the fundamentalism doesn't, is not many present in Europe, and at that time when Aldo Moro was raped and killed, there was really a situation, a contrast between who killed, who think that was a right to kill a man in the name of the idea, and the other who think that it was impossible, this logic. And when I did, I think always that it's a kind of foolish attitude to pretend to kill a man in the name of the idea. And more when I did the film, I tried to describe, recognize to this poor man. I was not of the same idea of Aldo Moro, but I want to defend his right to live. So that's and so the film is against this blind attitude, just to pretend to kill in the name of an idea.
An ideology. And when you see what's happening in some countries today, specifically Middle East or ISIS, killing people the way it is, how do you feel that a certain phase which in your life was perhaps overcome in Europe and other parts of the northern continent, has it come back?
I hope so. I hope that they never come back. But obviously I disagree totally with this kind of butchery. But also if I don't know the complexity of one situation, I can't judge. I can't say yes or not. But of course, it's a human reaction, immediate human reaction. When you kill people like this, I disagree completely.
You said somewhere a few minutes ago that it was more difficult to make films when you started and easier to make films perhaps now. But your own filmmaking career shows that you haven't made as many films as someone who could have made perhaps many more films than you have so far. So is the financing of your films a bit of a struggle, or the conditions in Europe now through the Eurozone and so on, are they easier?
Now it's more difficult because Europe is in crisis and there is less money. And but I mean the quality of the filmmaker is just to be able to make film also with the budget low budget, you know. But it's true that now the situation is monopolized by the television and Sky, you know, and the cinema has less space to that. When you say that here in India many people go to the cinema, that's good. But in Europe or in Italy, the public, the audience of the cinema reduced year by year.
It has substantially reduced from. You mentioned how the space has reduced for cinema in Europe, and television and other media, it has increased, if I understand you correctly. And I've noticed in your films of the last few years that you often refer to what you call the visual magma that we are surrounded by. Television and recorded music, sounds and screens everywhere present. And this visual magma, I feel that it is not just in Europe, it is perhaps in India too. In our hotel rooms where we are staying, you just have to switch two buttons and click two buttons, and you will see that it's very similar here. How do you think this affects our culture, our minds, our relationships to one another?
I don't know. No, because it's true. The visual magma that you say is true. That, but for me, but not only for me, for my story, for my life, for my age, but for everybody, I follow this fashion, this moda is wrong. But is for my generation, for me, now my images, my inspiration go in free direction. But I suppose that young people live inside this visual magma. Surely the idea of the cinema can't is obliged to consider this.
To acknowledge it in a way.
Fa parte della conoscenza, fa parte dell'ispirazione.
It's part of the knowledge and the inspiration. It's part of the world around us that our films reflect upon in each era. Among the important developments in Europe in the last 20 years or so has been the question of whether the European Union has succeeded or it has created more problems for Europe.
For the cinema or in general?
In general. I'm moving you to a slightly different question. Do you think that the rise of certain conservative forces, say in France, in England, and Italy also, this will lead to eventually a social crisis, something like Italy had and Europe had in earlier decades? In the 60s it had a very big crisis.
Yes. And, I'm not a politician, but there is this attitude, the conservative attitude, kind of quite a primitive nationalism. Every country don't refuse Europe, but try always more to defend his own right. And there are many parties in France, but also in Italy, where the party who make propaganda against the euro, against the European right, has a certain great success. Yes, it's true.
My final question before we is there a Q&A after this, or we probably we take it from where, take it how it goes. My final one or two questions then. Among the important filmmakers, thinkers, scientists perhaps in the world that you are aware of? As you said, we are all reacting to the information that we are getting. You think there's anything really notable or profoundly significant that you think about a lot, or you would like to just talk about a kind of a favorite subject of any kind, maybe a filmmaker, maybe a composer, maybe a writer, and a novelist or a poet?
Many, it's difficult to answer, but when
it's my job to ask some
No,
tough questions.
I remember when I were at the school of the cinema, I discovered a real contradiction. I believe more and more that filmmaker or an artist in general to defend his freedom, it's not to be conditioned, but conflict, ideology. But I have to recognize that when I was at the school of the cinema, I discovered the great Soviet cinema, silent cinema. It was a propaganda cinema, it was a country, what I said before. But anyway, it was a great masterpiece. So the complexity of the form of the art is, I speak for me, but there are examples of propaganda cinema, very revolutionary, very masterpiece of the art. Absolutely.
To this day. A regular question which is asked of all filmmakers, that winning a Lifetime Achievement Award of any kind is perhaps something like saying a goodbye to a filmmaker, that you've done your films now, go and lead a peaceful, retired life, something like that. Some filmmakers have said it publicly, others have heard it, I've heard within my hearing, but I don't think.
Yes.
But have you heard this question or this thought before? But are you going to retire?
No, I don't retire myself. I said also when I received the prize, it's history. I received just many prizes to the career, and è un destino, nel senso. But I hope to continue to work. I still have the project to make other films. Yes.
So you have in production at the moment.
Yes,
also,
yes. I finish a film that I made this summer, and I prepare another film the next year. No,
So,
we work.
Fantastic. Well, I think you have several more films in you, and at least a couple of decades more of making films. Let me congratulate you again for all your awards, not just this one. And if there are any questions from the audience, we have a chance to meet one of the greatest living filmmakers, and it would be good to take this opportunity. Otherwise,
no, thank you very much for the prize.
there's one question coming from here. How do you choose your subject? What makes it click?
But for instance, this summer I made a film with a story very strange, but that I told a long time. And, but the difference is when I I decided, but maybe I can't do the film. It's not enough because. But when I found not a team, not but some images, no, and so I start from them, and after I start to compose the history and no, also, but at the end, when you have done a lot of work, you recognize that also the start is maybe a book or the proposed to you, you find always some very personal images, team that regard you.
Yes.
But I want to know what your thoughts are about getting the film out in audience. Theaters are being dominated by big production houses, and the film festivals we have a lot of powerhouses that are releasing the film watching. People may not be that good, but they are being selected on the basis of their previous series. So how do you, what are your thoughts on about getting the film out to an audience? How does a normal person do it?
But if you make in Italy, I speak about Italy, and what I said was quite easy today, much more easy than when I start to make a film, because now the technology, the basic technology, permit to everybody to make a film. But for my film, in Italy there is a production and a distribution. It's difficult to produce a film without a distribution, and I believe that depends on the film, is fortune or not, is destiny or not to the public. But anyway, the situation is to produce a film and to have already a distribution that guarantee to distribution of the film in Italy, and after there are co-production with other nations of the Europe, often France, Germany, and that's the situation.
Okay, I think we can end now. Then I thank the organizers of the festival, and I congratulate them also for this excellent choice of Marco Bellocchio as the Lifetime Achievement Award winner for this year.
Say Nani, that's in the language of Nani.
All the very best for the future. Okay, thank you.